John Dinwright is with the Department of Social Services Family Support Division. John has been with the Missouri Department of Social Services since 1992 and has worked with all aspects of the child support program. So that's paternity, establishment, enforcement, modification, and foster care. Beginning in 2000, Mr. Dinwright worked in central office as the DSS legislative liaison for child support issues and managed the customer relations unit, parent fair share program, and various outreach and family-centered initiatives. He's also managed multiple state contracts, including the Child Support Customer Service Call Center. Mr. Dinwright currently serves as the Family Support Division Deputy Director. In this role, he manages the child support program for the state of Missouri. Mr. Dinwright also serves as a member of various boards and committees, including the Missouri Reentry Program Steering Team and the Government Contact Center Council. John is also a highly sought-out speaker where he has presented at regional and national conferences on various child support topics. And you guys are in for a treat this morning. So we are so pleased to have him with us today. And with that, I will turn it over to John and his team.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to give you guys a presentation on child support. The reason that we really wanted to connect with the folks from ParentLink is that we've seen a rise in the kinship caregivers that are actually need child support services. And sometimes when you have a new group of individuals in need of a service, you cannot always make the assumption that we need to provide services the way that we always provide services. So we're kind of new to this area as well. This is kind of uncharted territories dealing with the number of kinship caregivers that we have. And there's special such situations and circumstances that you guys will have to deal with. And hopefully what we want to do with this presentation is give you a good foundation of the child support process and kind of incorporate the kinship caregivers side of it in it as well. I know there's different things that you guys as kinship caregivers will actually want to consider when you decide to enter the world of child support, or maybe not request the services of child support. But really, this is an opportunity for you to kind of get a better understanding of what child support entails, what the different jargon and terminology means, what your options are, and the importance of the different elements of the child support program. So with that, we'll get started here. It's a fairly small group. So, if you have anything that you want to ask, just kind of pipe in, or hopefully we'll try to get through it a little bit quick so we can have questions and answers at the end as well. If you want to chat something in and you don't feel comfortable speaking up, go ahead and chat it in. And then one of my staff, LaShawna, will read the chat and we can do it that way as well. So just want to give you the information that you need to empower you to be in a better position to serve your family. Next slide, please. So there's a couple of things really when you talk about child support, and one of the things that is important and that we really hold dear is we do not represent the mother, the father, the custodian, the non-custodial parent. We're looking out for the interests of the child. And I think that is special in the kinship caregiver's heart because, a lot of times we'll have a custodial parent that may be the mother or the father, but they're there because they have to be. And normally when you have a kinship caregiver, they're there because they love that child, they love that family member, and they really want to provide a better life for their child. So that's why the roles of kinship caregivers has a special place in the hearts of the child support program, because we realize the difficult position that you're in. And that's why we're here to assist you to make life a little bit easier for those children. And if that is assisting you to get extra income into the household so you can provide for those children, that is one of the main purposes that we are here. But we are not here to cause anybody pain or hardship. That's the last thing that we want to do. I know a lot of times, child support is looked at as a big bad bear in the woods, but that's not our purpose. That's not our goal. Our goal is to provide better lives for children. And I think that as kinship caregivers, we share in that goal. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do, we're going to discuss the different topics and foundations of child support today, the general information, paternity establishment, the actual child support, enforcement, modification, and the termination of child support. And with that, we're going to kind of incorporate a little bit every now and then on specific information as how it would relate to the kinship caregivers. If I kind of go off the slides, sometimes some of my team members might have to pull me back in because, if I can think of a way that it might be better attached to you, then I'm going to probably go down that road as well. Next slide, please. So information specifically for kinship caregivers. And you can move on to the next slide, Shauna. So, and there's a couple of things that really we need to get a hold of here, because if you are not in a formal kinship caregiver role and the children's division isn't involved, and you are not receiving TANF, which is temporary assistance to needy family, don't confuse that with Medicaid or SNAP or food stamps. If you're not getting that cash grant known as TANF, then you as a kinship caregiver have control over all aspects of your child support process, which means that you do not necessarily have to open up a child support case for both parents. Which means that if you as a kinship caregiver and your daughter is one of the parents, you're not required to open up a case against your daughter, but you could, if you wanted to, open up a case against the father. If you wanted to open up a case against your daughter and the father, you could as well. So you really have full control over who you want to collect child support from. Now, if it's more of a formal relationship, then sometimes the children division, if the child was placed with you, would control the child support aspects of it until they are no longer involved. If you are receiving TANF, the TANF grant, which I think we have 300,000 cases and we have about 10,000 cases on TANF. So that is a very small percentage of our caseload. But then there is a requirement that a child support case is opened up against both parents, unless there's a good cause reason not to pursue a child support case. Also, you as a kinship caregiver, very important here, will never be ordered to provide child support unless at some point a formal adoption occurs. But as a kinship caregiver, you should never be ordered to provide child support for the child if something happens along the way. So be sure if that ever happens or you ever get a letter to find wherever I'm at and tug on my shirt, because that's something that should not be happening. When establishing a new child support order, the kinship caregiver or your income will be used along with the other parent's income to determine the child support amount, because you are at that point what we would be deemed as the custodial parent. And we'll talk a little bit in a little bit here about the how we go about establishing that the child support order or the amount that the other individual is ordered to pay. But that's the general information on how specific the kinship caregiver's role is. I don't know if anybody has a question on that yet, but if not, we can kind of move on. And if you have questions, like I said, just kind of let us know. General information is what we do. As I said earlier, what we do is try to provide a better life for children in Missouri and across the nation, depending on where the parents are located at. That could be locating parents. Unfortunately, sometimes parents don't want to be located. So we will locate the parents if a child support order is in effect, and we need to locate the parent or the non-custodial parent to what his assets or her assets are, so we can collect the child support. So we do have an extensive parental locate services that we have available, and we have a locate team. And one of the things, being around since the 90s, the advent of the internet is a boom to our locate. So a lot of times folks don't want to be found, but they will go on social media and tell us where they're at. So go figure that. But the other thing that we do a lot is we establish a paternity. And I think that may be one of the most important aspects of child support. I know normally when you hear about child support, you hear about somebody taking money. But before we can take a dime, we have to establish a legal relationship for that individual. And that is called establishing paternity. And it's very important because what that does, it establishes a generational link between that child and the father. And it also establishes a responsibility to provide for that child. But what that does is, that is, that's your history, that's your generations. That's your family tree that we're helping to establish. And it's very important that we establish paternity. And a lot of times, we have custodial parents or mothers that say they don't want to establish paternity because they don't want the father to be a part of their lives. And that's understandable, given the fact of maybe the prior relationship she's had with that individual. But you can't deny the truth. And if the truth is that individual is the legal father or the legal parent, then, we have to establish that parentage. And that is only going to benefit the child one day. It might not be that immediate benefit, because just because we establish the parenting relationship doesn't mean that individual is going to step up and be the parent that we want that person to be. But one day, that child will look at that birth certificate and know from where they came, and they'll be able to pass that information on to their child and their grandchildren. It's very difficult for someone, and I know folks now that, they're 40, 50, 60 years old, and they don't know who their father is, or they didn't know who their father was. And they don't have the ability to tell their grandchildren who their great-great-grandfather was. And you lose a little bit there because sometimes greatness skips a generation. And maybe that person's father was not a great person, but I'll guarantee you somewhere along that family tree, there is greatness, and that you're connected to that greatness as well. The other thing that we do is we establish and enforce orders. That's the part of we actually, once we establish that order, we're going to try to collect that child support for you. We also establish medical support orders. Next slide, please. We provide services to mothers, fathers, kinship caregivers, adult children, alleged fathers, and legal representative of deceased custodial parents. Most of that is self-explanatory as far as why we would provide services to all of those demographic areas. Of course, the majority of our cases are between the mothers and the fathers. And then, of course, we have the kinship caregivers is coming around the corner very fast, because it's something that is becoming more and more prevalent, of course. Anyone can receive child support services by filling out an application. Everyone may not qualify, but anyone can complete an application, and at that point, we will see if we will be able to assist you. Additionally, and I spoke of some of this earlier, if you're on Medicaid, then there could be a requirement that we pursue the medical support portion of a court order. If you're on TANF, which is that cash grant, we would still attempt to collect child support for both parents in a kinship caregiver role. There would be 2 non-custodial parents, because each parent would actually be a non-custodial parent at that point. And cases where the children are in the foster care system, which could be a formal kinship caregiver placement as well. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit earlier about paternity establishment. That is the way that we establish paternity. And once we establish paternity, then we establish a legal parentage of that child. As I said earlier, establishing paternity gives a legal father the legal rights. In Missouri, you can establish paternity 3 different ways. If you are married to an individual or divorced within 180 days, I believe, then you are basically assumed to be the legal father of that child. Even if I know some in some communities, folks get married, then they stop living together for 20 years, but they've been separated. If you're still legally married and the female or the mother has a child, legally you would be the legal father of that child. Now, there are some things that we can legally do to get that reversed if you're not the actual father, but marriage is a legal establishment of paternity in Missouri. The other aspect, and the most prevalent that we're dealing with right now, is through a paternity affidavit. It's called the 465 form for the Bureau of Vital Records. And basically that is the form where you acknowledge that you are the parent or the father. Both parents have to sign it. A lot of times it's signed at the hospital when the child is born, or it can be signed at any point thereafter as well. And basically, once that acknowledgement is signed, it is as good as a court order. It has legal standing, and it is very difficult to reverse. And I'll kind of get on my soapbox here, because everybody, and I know you as kinship caregivers and parents as well, you have to be very careful when you sign that paternity affidavit, because the legal ramifications are immense. And what I normally tell somebody is, and I tell this when my family barbecues and when I'm at the family reunions and when talking to my cousins and my nieces and my nephews, is if you're not sure, don't sign that paternity affidavit. If you're not 100% sure, don't sign that paternity affidavit. Childbirth is a very happy thing. It's a very joyful thing. And sometimes you can let the emotions get a part of you and sign that paternity affidavit, and then you start having second thoughts. And at that point, it could be too late. And in order to get a reverse, it's going to cost you a lot of money and a private attorney, and then it still might not be reversible. So make sure, if you're going to sign that paternity affidavit, I'm going to talk a little bit here about genetic testing and how that incorporates with the paternity affidavit a little bit. And I'll come back to that paternity affidavit. The other way that paternity can be established in Missouri is via court order. And that's basically a administrative or judicial court will render the father, the parent, as the legal father. Next slide, please. So if paternity has not been established by one of those 3 means, then FSD, which is us, we will provide free genetic testing, which is always the option that I tell the folks that I care for. Because you don't, unless you know for sure, and you never really know for sure, don't sign the paternity affidavit. Request genetic testing. It's no longer the blood draws. Right now, it's a buccal swab where you kind of swab it on the cheek, and they do the DNA matching, and then it comes back you either are or you're not the father. And if it comes back that you are the father, then step up, sign the paternity affidavit. And then there is no question. There is no question. There's not going to be that argument between you and the mother 5 years later where she blurts out, "You're not the daddy anyways," and you don't have nothing that you can do. Because once you know for sure, then there is no questions remaining in your mind, because you have that genetic testing that we would have done for free anyway. So, like I said, unless you're 100% sure, just do the genetic testing, and if it comes back, then you can sign the paternity affidavit. Next slide, please. So once we establish paternity, then we go about establishing a child support order. Next slide. The child support is a court-ordered obligation to help the custodial parent care for the children. And the custodial parent can be a kinship caregiver. It can be a mother. It could also be the children's division. So kinship caregiver. It could be the father as well. We have about last time I checked, about 10-11% of our cases were actually our custodial parent was the father. So we collect child support for fathers, mothers, whoever has custody or who's ever really looking after that child. We'll collect child support for those individuals. Child support may include financial obligation. That's the dollar amount that you hear about most frequently. Medical support, or provisions for child support arrears, also known as back child support or the past due child support. So your child support court order could address all three of those issues. Normally, the medical support and the the current support obligation are in most. If there is a previous obligation or if it was a modification, then at some point it may address the arrears or past due support as well. Yes, April, everything that I'm speaking about is available through our, if you're in Department of Corrections or incarcerated. So there really isn't any process that we have that differs in incarceration. So we actually have a genetic test vendor will actually go to the institution and do the buccal swabs as well. Child support can be ordered either monthly, semi-monthly, bi-weekly, or weekly. Monthly, of course, is the most frequent. And even if it's ordered semi-monthly, bi-weekly, or weekly, if we're collecting through an income withholding order, the employer will normally send it in once a month. So most situations, you're going to probably be receiving your child support once a month, or if they get paid twice a month, sometime you'll get it twice a month. But the majority of the child support comes in once a month. Enforcement of child support is probably what you hear the most about child support. What it is, but as I said earlier, it's not necessarily the most important part, but it is an integral part of what we do is enforce child support. Big thing here is no one on the case has the right to select which enforcement measures we take. The enforcement measures that we take are at the full discretion of the actual caseworker and the agency. Normally, the majority of child support that is collected through income withholding order. I think maybe upwards to 60-65% of the money that we collect is through an income withholding order. And that's a situation where the non-custodial parent has a child support order, also has a job that he or she is working at, and we'll send an income withholding order directly to the employer. The employer will take the child support out, send it in to us. We'll pass it on to the custodial parent if the custodial parent is not receiving TANF. And normally there are no issues with that. That is a pretty smooth transition on how to collect child support. Collecting child support becomes a little bit more difficult if they're not working within a realm where they're actually getting a paycheck, because then we have to take the other enforcement remedies, or, you know, that's when things get a little bit difficult. If they are delinquent, we do have other measures that we can take, such as we can intercept their income taxes, put liens on their bank accounts, take away their hunting license, put a hold on their driver's license, report the debt to the credit bureaus, whole bunch of, we can put a hold on their passport. So there are a whole bunch of enforcement remedies that we have available to us in order for us to assist in collecting that child support. Once we establish child support, we do realize that circumstances change for all the parties. And sometimes if the income that they were making when we first established that order has changed, then we'll proceed with what we call is a modification. And basically a modification is just a process where we look at the establishing the support order by the income that they are making right now. Once we establish the child support order, that is valid until it's modified or changed. So if we establish the order in 2005, that order will remain in effect until that child emancipates, or the order is either terminated legally or modified to a new amount. So the modification is just a process that we go about seeing if the child support that we're collecting is at the level that it should be for today's standards. Next slide, please. Normally, you're eligible for modification automatically after 3 years has passed when that original order was established. There are circumstances, though, where we'll look at it earlier than the 3 years if there's a substantial change in either party's income, or we need to add or remove a child, or if it was a child support order that was established that did not include the actual dollar amount, maybe it just had the medical support obligation, then we will modify it early to include the child support dollar amount. Next slide, please. Modifications are completed or requested or started by just sending a letter. It's not a form, it's not a court document. It's just writing on a piece of paper, I would like to have my case reviewed for modification. You can send it in to that address. I believe that after this presentation, the good folks from Parent Links will share the presentation on their website. So that is the address that you would send it to. But once again, you can always call our call center or get in touch with the navigator line, and they'll get you in touch with somebody from child support as well to make sure that we get those modification requests and they're handled properly. Next slide, please. Termination of support, which is called emancipation. In Missouri, support terminates when the children or the child turns 18, unless the child is still in school. If the child is still in high school, or hopefully by then college, it can continue up until the age of 21 if they're meeting certain educational requirements, such as attending a college or a vocational school and making at least a C average and carrying 12 hours of courses. Yet, and any child support that is owed when the child is emancipated or the current support is terminated, that remains due. So some of the cases that we're collecting on, there is no more current support, but we're still trying to collect the arrears or the child support was due when the children were still of age. That's why every now and then you'll hear about some a 60-year-old or 50-year-old individual whose children are 30 and still have to pay child support because they didn't pay it when they should have. And that obligation does not go away once the child is emancipated. And We can take child support out of Social Security. So a lot of times we start really collecting those past due arrears when 65 hits, because then we can actually take child support out of Social Security. There's certain things that the child support program cannot assist with. Of course, we don't get involved with divorce or divorce petitions, custody or guardianship. We do not get involved with that. Parenting time and visitation, that's a big one. But unfortunately, the Missouri state statutes do not allow us to intervene and establish parenting time or visitation. Now, we do have a mediation contract and services that are available to us through March mediation, that if all parties agree, they will be able to assist in setting up a parenting time and visitation. March mediation is also a partner with ParentLink. So that is an opportunity that if you need those mediation services, they can be provided to you through ParentLink or through the Child Support Agency, or both at the same time. Next slide, please. Kinship Caregiver and Child Support Access, we are very, very excited to partner with the good folks from ParentLink, and with I would probably say for about the last 4 months or so, we have been working on at least 3 or 4 different initiatives to really help us reach you and help us help you. And just a couple of the things that we have incorporated or we're working on right now is that we have provided to the folks from ParentLink direct access to a child support representative through the Kinship Navigator line, which means that if you call the Kinship Navigator line and you have a child support question, they will give you the secret phone number, the red phone number of one of my child support staff that will be able to assist you with a special understanding of the hardships that the Kinship caregivers have to go through. So we're not going to just send you to the call center and say, fend for yourself. We're going to send you to somebody who, if you do not get good services, the folks from ParentLink will call me, and then I will make sure that you get good services. So we're very excited about that, to have that direct link to make sure that your issues not just get solved, but get solved in a timely manner, because we know that what you guys are going through, time a lot of times is of the essence. We're also going to be doing quarterly child support presentations. This is the first quarterly child support presentation, but unfortunately, you may see me pop up every quarter, or somebody from my staff pop up every quarter, and we won't just give the same presentation. We'll tailor it to questions or issues that have come up through the Navigator line or through our contact with the Kinship support groups. Speaking of the Kinship support groups, we are also going to be an active participant in the support groups, because, and Yvette or Angie, you can help me out with which one we're going to be in, but I think the one coming up next week, we're actually going to have a child support caseworker that will be in that support group. And then if you have any specific questions regarding your situation, they'll be able to put you and my caseworker into a breakout session where the two of you can talk about your specific information without having to tell everybody your life story. So that's something that we're really excited for, and we'll be showing up there from time to time, and they'll normally announce that at the beginning of the support group meeting, and they'll be there to answer general questions. But as I said as well, if you have that breakout, want to go into the breakout room or the special room, we call it, for the private session, we will do that as well. And of course, as a last resort for my friends here, you can always call our customer call center, which is 866-313-9960. If you call that number, I'm going to consider my speech here a waste of time, because you should have called the Navigator line. So if you get anything and you have a child support question, call the Navigator line. But if for some reason you don't want to call the navigator line, you can call the call center. But preferably, I want you to call the navigator line so we can get you directed to somebody that has a better understanding of what your issues are.
And John, this is Amy. I was just going to say, when they call the navigator line, be sure to say that you're a kinship family and you want to be able to be connected to that line, because this line is just for kinship families. So make sure you tell them that, because we do get calls from other family members who, parents about child support, and we're not going to give them the special line. So make sure you tell us that. So
thank you. Thanks, Angie. That's kind of all I had. I think we still have probably about 5 minutes if anybody has questions. If not, I'm not hard to find. There's only like 2 gen rights in the state. One of them belongs to me, and she's in Iowa right now. So, if you need to find me, you need to reach me. It's not hard. Just Google me. It'll come up. Otherwise, you can contact me, contact anybody from my staff. The good folks at ParentLink will, if you call the navigator line or whoever you call over there, we're here to help. And that's really what it comes down to. We're here to help. We realize, and myself as a kinship caregiver in many roles, I know the hardships that you guys are going through, and we're just here to make life a little bit easier for you guys.
All right. Well, are there any questions or comments from our group this morning for John and his team?
I'm just curious, Mr. Genright, as people get into your line of work and the service that you do, is there anything that really tends to surprise people that maybe they didn't anticipate?
And I have a lot of my staff on here, so you guys can pipe in too. But I think we're surprised on both ends. Because on the one end, we're surprised about how some parents think that they don't really respect what goes into parenthood and the actual duty and the rewards that is associated with it. They don't realize that that's probably the most important job that you're ever going to have. And then on the other end of what is surprising is, and you hear a lot about fathers that don't pay child support, and a lot of times they assume that to be fathers who don't care about their children. But that's not that doesn't always track. There's a lot of fathers out there not paying child support, but they are fathers that are you would probably want to give the Father of the Year award to. So don't measure your fatherhood or your parentage by how much money you pay, because we don't. I don't know, team, is there anybody else that wants to say something?
I think for me, the thing that we come across is all of the services that both parents have available to them, both fathers and mothers. So if they are in need of employment or just additional services outside of the child support realm, we do have resources and organizations that we work with, including our own selves, that can assist them with getting resources that they need. So I think a lot of people are always surprised that we're not here to just collect financial and medical support, but we also provide outside resources for our parents and kinship caregivers.
All right, Kyle, I think you're unmuted. Big 10.
Okay, thank you. For some reason, I had to use the keypad. LaShawna really nailed what I was going to say. In addition to that, a lot of what John talked about today is also on the website. If you have any further questions, dss.mo.gov/child-support. And that's also where you can submit an application if you want to submit it online.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
we're just so pleased that you were able to be here today. And that was a great presentation. I've been looking at some of the comments in chat, and yeah, it was just perfect information for all of us to have as we move forward and think about some ways